All of the three new variants, 60 to 70% more transmissible over that of the old variant. And that makes it really alarming, because if you have a virus that is highly transmissible, then that can also increase the possibility of surges of cases.
You are listening to Dr. Ron Jean Solante, member of government's vaccine expert panel. He cautions that more highly transmissible variants of COVID-19 could lead to a spike in cases.
The UK variant alone is found to be twice as lethal than the original strain of SARS-CoV-2. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I am Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Despite the vaccine rollout, health experts are ringing the alarm bells as variants emerging in the country are being found to be more transmissible.
They said the government may have to speed up its vaccination efforts as daily cases may jump by up to 6,000 by the end of the month. Mobile journalist Stanley Gahete giving you a front seat to the big story.
For COVID survivor Myra, the long wait is over. Vaccinations have started, and while she is not yet in line for the shots, at least the line has started to move.
Pero that time, grabe din yung discrimination nun. Tapos sobrang down ko nun kasi ang dami-daming pwedeng magka-COVID. Ikaw pa.
But it's a race against time. Vaccinations are off to a slow start, while the COVID numbers have again begun to surge.
Sa Octa report namin, we projected na kapag walang measures na gagawin, NCR is projected to have 2,000 new cases per day by March 21 and 3,000 new cases per day by March 31, while the nationwide number is projected to have 5,000 to 6,000 new cases per day by the end of March.
The emergence of new and more infectious variants are also alarming. A full vaccine rollout is not expected until the third quarter.
All of the three new variants are 60 to 70% more transmissible. That can also increase the possibility of surges of cases. The government should fast track the rollout of vaccination so that will be less of the local transmission.
The problem, Dr. Solante says, is that the more the infection spreads, the more the virus mutates, and the more variants we will have to face. Solante says for ordinary Filipinos, the real fight begins at home and the workplace.
For that variant not to mutate further and not to spread further, is to really implement strictly the minimum health protocol.
And for all the criticisms of the government's vaccination program, Solante says Filipinos can help just by getting the jobs as soon as they become available.
We should not worry of how long the vaccine will work. What we should worry is how long we can vaccinate 50 million.
While various vaccines are now coming in the country to help us fight the coronavirus, the health department says to the public, don't be relaxed. The need to strictly enforce minimum health protocols should always be practiced to be able to lower the infection rates and reduce the mutations of the virus. Stanley Gate, We Are One News.
The mortality rate for the B117 variant of SARS-CoV-2 is significantly higher than others. That's what researchers are saying. According to a new study published in the British Medical Journal, the UK variant is between 30 to 100% more deadly than the original virus. In a sample of about 55,000 patients, the UK variant led to 227 deaths compared with 141 caused by others. But the study says death in the community from COVID-19 is still a rare event. The UK variant is also 40 to 70% more transmissible than other variants. On the issue of vaccines versus variants, how is the Philippines faring in what seems like a race against time? Joining us this evening, we have Ted Herbosa, Special Advisor to the government's COVID-19 Task Force. Good evening, Dr. Herbosa.
Good evening, Robbie, and good evening to our televiewers.
Doc, the language from the public health sector, from our health experts, are becoming more and more explicit, if not more and more urgent. They are saying, kakaiba tong surge na nakikita natin, despite that we're saying, as far as the government is concerned, are we now safe, is it now safe to assume and to proceed from the assumption that this surge is being driven by new variants?
The surge is, according to the Department of Health, the surge is still due to the laxity in minimum public health standards. So that's the first priority. To blame it on the variants is possible. That's a possibility, and we are seeing an increase of all these different variants in the different cases where there are increasing numbers, especially here in NCR, in Cebu, and in the different areas where there seems to be a very rapid increase in numbers. So I would say both. We need to continue our public health measures. Plus, we are worried that these new variants are more transmissible.
Yes.
And they will transmit faster. And some of them are even mild and asymptomatic. That's why I think some of the areas are spreading very fast. So we need to remind everyone to continue to follow the standards of face mask and face shield and avoiding crowded places.
Hey, one problem that na sinasabi ng LGUs from last week pa is that it takes about 2 weeks for the genome sequencing to confirm which variant is affecting particular cases. But that was last week, which means that in about a week, we will have a surge of reports to confirm or to allay fears on whether or not these are the UK or the South African variants, and whether or not that is a factor to this surge in cases. But assuming that it is, then given the transmissibility, the higher transmissibility that you pointed out, the concern now is, can our vaccination efforts keep pace or stay ahead of the reality that these more transmissible variants are now in the country? Is government, and would you advise that government recalibrate the reopening of the economy and the steps being taken and the aggressiveness to reopen the economy if it is confirmed that the new variants are in fact a big factor in driving the numbers?
Well, we've looking at our vaccination rates, and I came from the National Vaccine Operations Center, and it showed an increase in our number of vaccinees and vaccinations occurring all over the country. So that's going up. We need it faster than as what it is. So we'll try to ramp it up some more. I think the decision of whether to do some lockdown will have to be localized, because now we know more that when we do these big lockdowns of big areas, the economy suffers. So the idea should be more meticulous, localized lockdowns, which are being implemented by some of our local chief executives, and more stringent application of the rules of minimum public health standards. So you heard the police saying no more public display of affection, etc. And that means follow the social distancing protocols being advocated by the Department of Health.
Yes, but Dr. Herbosa, I mean, again, those two interventions have to do with what citizens can do for themselves as individuals, and on the other level, what LGUs can do by way of granular lockdowns. But if transmissibility and higher transmissibility is a concern, we're starting to hear it from LGUs that we may have to consider something, interventions higher than the LGUs, particularly, for example, loosening protocols for and standardizing travel protocols between LGUs, for example. That goes beyond the question of granularity, and therefore that is precisely why people are asking what is government prepared to do beyond the granular lockdowns that LGUs can impose if transmissibility and leakage of cases from one LGU to the other becomes a real problem.
Well, that's the response. The health response cluster decides on that and will make recommendations to the IATF. Depending on the increase of cases or the flattening of cases based on these granular lockdowns, we will have to make a decision based on the results or the outcome of the initial measures being implemented. The good thing is we're already vaccinating, so we're protecting the people that are already vaccinated become protected. And then there are people who've had the illness, so they've had natural protection as well. So the situation isn't the same as it was 1 year ago when all this was all new. So we have several things in place as well. Our testing is capable. We now have to ramp up again contact tracing. And this is another thing that I saw the LGUs implementing again, the increase in the aggressiveness of contact tracing so that they can find the positive cases and be able to isolate them.
Okay, Dr. Ted Herbosa, Special Advisor to the COVID-19 National Task Force. Maraming salamat po. The number of new infections past 3,000 shows no signs of abating. Tonight's big number is 3,749. That's the highest single-day tally of new COVID cases since September, when the country recorded more than 3,900 new infections. On a per-week basis, new cases recorded come in no less than 11,000 since late January, with weekly infections reaching close to 17,000 last week.
These are the other big stories tonight. The families of the slain activists killed in the Calabarzon raids over the weekend were held by the police inside an Antipolo funeral home. Police say they were just taking precaution. And should residents agree, Palawan will be divided into 3 provinces. The COMELEC says they're all set for the plebiscite happening this weekend. These big stories right after the break.
Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. After the controversial series of raids in Calabarzon, families of slain activists were locked up at a funeral home in Antipolo as they demanded the release of their loved ones' bodies. Police say the move was just a precaution against violence. Patricia Mangune with the report.
Families of the slain activists spent the night outside this funeral parlor in Antipolo. Having completed payments and requirements, they're just waiting for the release of their loved ones' bodies. But instead of retrieving the remains, they too were locked inside the Antipolo Memorial Homes this morning. Their legal counsels, the National Union of People's Lawyers, rushed to the scene. The counsels, along with supporters, banged on the gates of the funeral home, demanding the release of the bodies and the families of the slain activists.
Na-identify na yung bodies, nag-usap na, binayaran na sila. Hindi namin alam kung anong dahilan nila, why ganyan pa rin at wini-withhold nila yung bodies.
The PNP says the funeral parlor's owner sought their assistance, fearing militant groups might trespass or cause violence.
Tumawag yung owner ng funeraria at nakikiusap na pumunta po yung pulis doon. Siyempre, for purposes of maintaining law and order, wag naman po yung pagpasok nitong mga karapatan, yung magugulo pa po sila, private establishment po yon.
Antipolo police say they are not blocking the release of the bodies. They just want to ensure the financial assistance to be provided by Rodriguez and Tanay Rizal LGUs.
Gusto lang natin dito is yung maayos na burol, magkaroon ng nabihisan na yung mga patay, mayroon na rin silang ataol para pagdala sa Tanay, maayos na.
But the family's camp said they were not informed of such agreement.
Walang nagsabi na may tutulong. Kaninang umaga lang at yun ang ginamit upang i-delay yung release.
It was around 11 a.m. this morning when the families were released from the compound. Later that afternoon, it was settled that the bodies will be released within the day through a written authorization from the families' lawyers. The families are pushing for a separate independent autopsy, as well as possible charges for arbitrary detention against the police and the funeral parlor. The Justice Department says investigations into Calabarzon killings will now be endorsed to the AO35 committee handling extrajudicial killings. For News 5, Patricia Mangune, we are One News.
Lieutenant General Antonio Parlade Jr. took a swipe at the Senate after some lawmakers recommended his removal as spokesman of the government's anti-insurgency task force. Parlade said senators are disposed to kicking him out of the NTF-ELCAC, but not other military officers. He says communist allies of some lawmakers were already hurting from their anti-insurgency efforts. According to the Senate Defense Panel report, Parlade's appointment is unconstitutional as active military personnel are banned from holding civilian positions in government.
I think the issue is yung mga kaalyado nila nasasaktan at dumudulog sa kanila. Hindi ka ba magtataka bakit si General Parlade lang ang gusto nilang tanggalin? Napakadaming members ng NTF-ELCAC na active sa NTF-ELCAC and active sa armed forces.
More tourists flocked to Puerto Galera after it reopened doors and lifted swab test requirements. But the Oriental Mindoro governor is worried about such kind of leniency amid the threat of COVID-19 and the new variants. Our correspondent Romel Lopez is on the ground to give us some updates. Romel, what's going on there?
Yes, Gretchen, nightlife is already coming back slowly on the second day of Puerto Galera's reopening. Local police are making rounds to ensure that minimum health standards are in place. They distribute leaflets and call out those engaging on PDA. Ivan and his partner are having quality time in this bar, which has just resumed operation after a year-long shutdown. Ivan says they have long planned to return to Puerto Galera if it weren't for the expensive swab test before.
Nito ngang wala nang swab, go agad.
Edita finds Puerto Galera completely different now.
Normally, ang ingay-ingay dito, makikita nyo sa background po, yung linaw ng tubig niya, yung beach niya, all around it's really clean.
Puerto Galera has reopened its shores on March 10. Visiting the island just became easier after Mayor Rocky Ilagan lifted swab test requirements. The municipality has accepted 128 tourists since Wednesday. Business owners hope this will mark the start of their recovery.
Napakahina naman natin kung hindi pa natin natutunan in 1 year ang mga dapat nating gawin para protektahan ang ating sarili at ang ating mga mahal sa buhay at ang tao sa paligid natin. I think we're ready.
Dito lang talaga kami. Sa tagal-tagal na namin naghihintay.
But Oriental Mindoro Governor Bons Dolor has reservations about the lifting of swab tests. He wants another round of talks with Ilagan on the move. Gretchen, Governor Dolor says he will decide on the matter soon, but Mayor Ilagan says only the IATF can tell him what to do. Gretchen?
Thank you. That was Romel Lopez reporting live from Puerto Galera. We'll go for a quick break, but before that, 1 year since lockdowns were implemented in the country, kamusta na nga ba tayo? We leave you with a look into Signal TV's special town hall meeting this Sunday, and the big story. We'll be right back.
Months in quarantine. 12 months of battling the coronavirus. 12 months of living in a new normal. This March 14, One News brings together the people who helped shape the way we lived in the year of pandemic. How have we managed? What we may have missed? Where are we headed? Some of the country's leading voices in the scientific and business communities face the nation as the Philippines balances public health and economy. Kumusta na ba tayo? A town hall in the time of pandemic. Moderated by Robbie Alampay and Cheryl Cosim. Join us live March 14, Sunday. We are One News.
Good evening, you're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Palawan, the country's biggest island province, may soon be divided into 3 provinces. After nearly a year's delay due to the pandemic, how are preparations going? Giving us the details, Dale De Vera is reporting live from Palawan. Dale, is the COMELEC ready?
Robbie, the Commission on Elections says that everything is set for this weekend's plebiscite that will decide whether Palawan will be divided into 3 provinces. Adorned with sprawling beaches and beautiful lagoons, Palawan is consistently named as the best island in the world. The island is the largest province in the country in terms of total area. But this may soon change. After a delay of nearly a year, residents will finally vote on a proposed 3-way split on Saturday, March 13. If residents agree, the provinces will be named Palawan Oriental, Palawan del Norte, and Palawan del Sur.
Will this be, as of yesterday, supposed to be aalis na yung barko papunta roon, hindi natuloy kahapon.
But this will be a different election. Minimum health standards will be strictly implemented. Face masks are mandatory, but face shields are not. Only 5 voters at a time are allowed inside the polling precinct. Election watchers will also be limited to observe physical distancing. There will also be isolation facilities for voters with a temperature of 37.5 degrees Celsius or higher, where they will still be allowed to cast their votes. Pens, chairs, and other paraphernalia will also be disinfected. Voting will start at 7 in the morning and will end at 3 in the afternoon. Police have also been deployed in various parts of the province. And because this will be a manual election, vote canvassing may take time.
We cannot expect to have results in a day. Although, as mentioned earlier, hopefully we can get the final results by the 16th. Although it's okay, may give and take a day or 2, so that we can, determine whether it's a yes or isn't. So please understand the situation. Iba po ang sistema dito sa PLC.
There will only be one question on the ballot, whether Palawan should be divided or not. Robbie, COMELEC says that this plebiscite will help them in the 2022 national elections, as this weekend's voting will serve as a dry run for the conduct of polls in the midst of the pandemic. Robbie?
Maraming salamat, Dale. That was Dale De Vera reporting live from Palawan.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on print and online. From the Philippine Star, only 4 out of 17 Metro Manila LGUs are compliant with contact tracing standards of the World Health Organization. These are the cities of Manila, San Juan, Taguig, and the municipality of Pateros. According to the WHO standard, there should be at least 1 contact tracer for every 800 individuals. Business World reports foreign direct investment to the country slumped to its lowest in 5 years. Preliminary data from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas showed a 24.6% decrease in FDI net inflows in 2020. BSP attributes this to the pandemic's impact on global supply chains and business outlook. And this from News 5. Beginning April 1, Manila water consumers can expect a rate increase of 5 centavos per cubic meter. Meanwhile, Maynila rates will roll back by 1 centavo per cubic meter from April to June. MWSS says adjustments are caused by foreign currency differentials. Time for the big story in sports. It's finally happening. The country's top volleyball club teams under one roof, under one league. This as F2 Logistics completes the roster of PSL teams jumping over to the Premier Volleyball League. The Cargo Movers ends their 5-year stint with Philippine Superliga, where they won 5 titles. This comes days after former PSL teams Cherry Tigo and Santa Lucia announced their departure from the Semi-Pro League. 12 teams will now battle it out for the country's maiden professional volleyball league. Competition starts this May at the Inspire Sports Academy in Calamba, Laguna.
And like a blast to the past, a Spanish Navy ship is heading to the Philippines, this time to mark the 500th anniversary of the world's first circumnavigation. Juan Sebastian Elcano is traveling the globe to commemorate the routes of the Magellan Elcano expedition, which included the Philippines and our islands. The Spanish flagship will arrive in Guian, Eastern Samar next week, March 16. It will also visit Suluan and Humonhon Islands, as well as Cebu.
So can we go there? We're allowed?
Oh, sana.
Travel.
Well, it's not yet clear, but we'll see because with the virus, kailangan ako mag-ano. But with the virus spreading and it's not sure what the barriers are, we don't know what happens to the travel protocols.
Baka may virtual tour na lang. I'll be the one to feature it. That wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Gretchen Ho, and we are One News. Good evening.